Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Waukesha Town Board meeting on February 14th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Fisher?
Here.
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor Wolf?
Here.
Chairman Merrick?
Here.
Commissioner Webb?
Here.
Commissioner Ramirez? Commissioner Stigler?
Here.
Commissioner Miller? Commissioner Flanagan?
Here.
And Madam Clerk, Treasurer, Administrator, have we met all the open meeting laws?
Yes, we have.
And we could begin with citizens' comments. Anybody? And we can move on to approval of the minutes for November 8th. For the Plan Commission, is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And November 8th minutes for the Town Board, is there a motion?
Move we approve.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to minutes for December 13th. From the Plan Commission, is there a motion?
So move.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to the Town Board for the meeting minutes of December 13th. Is there a motion?
Move we approve.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to the meeting minutes of January 10th. And Commissioner Flanagan, you are not here. Is there a motion from the Plan Commission?
I move to approve.
And a second.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to the meeting minutes of January 10 for the Town Board. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 9. Clarification of the classification of use per section 13.2.8 sub C for Family Chapel Church located at W271 South 2929 Merrill Hills Road for nursery school or daycare. Planner Malarkey, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a planner appointment a couple weeks back with representatives from the church looking to open a daycare or a child care facility in the basement of the church. And I had an issue because our zoning ordinance doesn't address this use in any particular way. Now, you can do child care provided as a home occupation with specific restrictions in the residential district, but in other districts, there really isn't any word. So I'm asking specifically for clarification from the Plan Commission as to how this particular use would fit within the code, and if it doesn't, how we could make it do so. There's basically 3 ways to look at it. The first is by the definition of public building or uses. We define public buildings in the sense that principally of an institutional nature in serving a public need, such as churches, hospitals, schools, including private academic schools and nursery schools, libraries, museums, post offices, police and fire stations, public utilities, and other public services, but not including the operation of a public bar, restaurant, or recreational facility as a commercial purpose. So in that definition is churches and also nursery schools. This isn't necessarily a nursery school, though it may have a component of that. It's really just a commercial daycare. So that's one way to look at it. And then the property is actually zone P1, which allows those public buildings within it. The second is, to look at the business zoning district to see if there's a use similar, because the Plan Commission can make a determination based on the list of uses in B1, B2, and B3. If a daycare or child care use is similar to one of the already listed uses, we can determine that and be allowed that way. But I couldn't find anything listed in the permitted uses of those districts that's similar to a daycare or a child care use. And the Plan Commission may differ on that. The third option is under conditional uses. We do have a provision for uses or situations not specifically provided for in the conditional use section, so not already listed, which may be determined to be acceptable under the provisions of this section and in the judgment of the Plan Commission and Board meet the intent of the conditional use section as set forth in the ordinance. So similar to what was done for the event venue conditional use that was added. It's not a permitted use anywhere. It's not a conditional use anywhere. It could be added as a conditional use with a set of specific conditions that would be addressed. In this case, the conditions would include what zoning districts it would be allowed in. So that is the third option. And if that's the case, if we take that option, we'd have to draft those specific conditions, and they'd have to come forward for a conditional use permit as well. So I'm asking the Plan Commission for some direction on this. There is a fourth option that wouldn't be able to take place today, but that would be to amend the zoning ordinance itself to potentially amend the P1 district to allow the specific use, or amend the business zoning districts to allow daycare uses as part of those districts as well. So I'm asking for feedback.
So the issue is it appropriate to have a business such as this in the P1 district? And is that what was contemplated for the P1 district?
Just, if I might, Mr. Chairman, just, and maybe doubling back for a minute, is part of, and if you just kind of rerun this one more time, is part of what you're trying to do is look and see if there's a differentiation between a nursery school and a child care? Is that part of the element of the discussion?
Well, part of the power that the Plan Commission has is to determine whether or not uses are similar to already existing uses. So nursery schools are allowed in the P1 district. Schools are allowed. Churches are allowed. Would we determine, or is it possible to determine a child care facility or a daycare would be similar enough to a nursery school to be allowed? It'd be a commercial operation, and that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I understand. And what I'm just kind of scratching through on my head a little bit is I got to think there's some places where that line between a nursery school, child care, and daycare is not a bright line. I mean, some of that might be as much age of children or what or not. I mean, if you're just asking for an initial comment on this, I mean, if this is zoned for public use and you're telling us that public use, a specific definition is a nursery school, so could we find daycare to fit under that envelope or definition? Is that fundamentally the question?
That's one part of my question. If it's that, or the other. The other thing I'd add is that many times daycares or child cares also operate as nursery schools, have funding through the state to provide some education because it makes it more profitable to do so. So I don't know if that's the case for this one, but we shouldn't get too hung up on this specific instance, because whatever decision we make would apply town-wide to any property that would be zoned P1.
Sure it would, and I guess if you're looking for an initial reaction from me, if this is zoned P1 and P1 has specific language which permits nursery schools, have I got that correct so far?
Correct.
I mean, I personally wouldn't see an issue with daycare or child care fitting under that umbrella definition.
Are there limits structurally, and how many kids are we talking about? And, I mean, doesn't that come into the question here?
Yeah, the state certifies and licenses these operations based on the number of adults, how much space there is, and so on. And we haven't gotten to that point yet. They're just exploring the idea.
Okay, my question I've got is, if this is a nursery school, are they going to be outside and have outside time too? I mean, is this something that need to come in with a site plan of operation?
They will eventually, yes.
They would eventually? Yes. Okay.
This would not approve anything today. This would just be setting them on a path.
All right.
To do site plan or conditional use or something else.
I could go along with the idea that this is going to come under that P1 zoning, then if that's the case, I'd be all for it.
What's the difference between a nursery and child care?
Well, a nursery and childcare doesn't have much difference, but a nursery school, when you bring the term school in, then there's some education there.
We'd have to research it, but I assume there's different licenses for a nursery school.
Well, the state doesn't recognize nursery schools as a license. There's a family home care certification. There's a group daycare certification. This would fall under the group daycare licensing. The school itself is a different thing altogether in terms of money from the state.
There's not a school there now.
There is not a school there now.
So this is going to be a daycare.
Open to anyone, even outside of members of the church,
Okay.
for profit. The church is nonprofit, but they would be taking money from whoever has their kids in the daycare.
Okay. So then there's one more question that's raised, and that is it appropriate to have a for-profit business in an entity that is non-taxed?
My question to that is this run by the church, or is this going to be a private enterprise coming in here to
That's a
run
good
it?
question, because the planner appointment I had was a woman that belonged to the congregation who was going to be running it. So that it's in the church space. They'd be leasing it to her to run this, leasing or allowing her to use the space to run this group daycare out of. So it wouldn't necessarily be a church function under the umbrella of the church.
This is done in other communities.
Well, every community does things different in terms of how they categorize their uses. Our code is a little ambiguous, and that's why we're trying to figure out where it fits in.
That's an interesting question that I think the chairman even raised, is it appropriate to have a for-profit operation on the tax exempt parcel of land? I mean, that's the essence of your question, right?
Yes.
Are there, I don't know the answer to this, but maybe even Attorney Macy or somebody knows, but I know from time to time we have done payment in lieu of taxes or that type of thing. Is there a way, Attorney Macy, to skin that cat, if you will, if the issue is about a for-profit entity on a tax-exempt parcel of land? Is there a way to do a payment in lieu of taxes or that type of thing? Is that a solution?
That is not a solution legally. The only payment in lieu of taxes that are legal is when someone voluntarily comes in. You cannot talk about them, you cannot ask about them, you cannot require them. That's not to say that hospitals and other entities don't offer payments in lieu of taxes, but you can't talk about it and you can't ask about it.
I didn't ask the question to that.
No, I mean, your question's appropriate, but we can't go into that. And similarly, the issue of whether they pay taxes or not pay taxes is a whole different law. This is a zoning question. That's why it's here to the zoning. What is appropriate from a zoning viewpoint and a planning standpoint? The first question is, I think, and the planner will correct me if I'm wrong, do you want to allow daycares in your community? I think he assumed that you probably do. Okay, fair enough. Do we assume they probably want to allow it, and then we have to figure out where in the code it belongs if you want to allow it? Separate and aside from this parcel, as he stated, this is a decision that's going to apply to the whole town, and who can have daycares where. So, is it safe to assume that people are finding if there's the appropriate location and zoning allows for it, daycares are allowed? 8 or less are allowed because they're exempt from zoning. 8 or less persons in a daycare or home situation are exempt from zoning.
In a group community-based facility, yes.
You mean CBRF?
CBRF.
No,
But that
there's
does-
a separate law on daycares.
Oh, in a home setting, you mean? Yes, a home setting, yes.
Home setting. So
As a home occupation,
So you
yes.
start with that fact. The only one that we know of for sure that can be done in the town right now is in 8 or less children licensed in a family home situation is exempt from zoning. Okay? So now, if you want to allow them, should they be in business districts? Should they be in public districts? Should they be CUs? Should they be permitted uses? What should they be? That's really the broad question, correct?
That's correct.
And the daycare is not listed in any other zoning district that we have, is that correct?
The word daycare or childcare does not show up anywhere except under the home daycare within home occupations.
And that does not address zoning because, as you just explained, there's a...
Well, he said it's actually in our code. And
It's mentioned, but you know, it's a home occupation. As long
and
as
you could
fi-
say that's the only place you want to have them in your community. Okay, that's fine.
Good evening.
I guess in answer to your question, just big picture, conceptually, I could probably be persuaded to allow them as permitted uses in either public or business use, either one.
And since we're setting precedent, I would probably lean towards a business zoning, whether that, you know, wherever we fit that in, if that was B1, 2, or 3. And where would you think that fits best?
a future amendment to the code.
Yes.
It'd probably be allowable in any of them, but I'd have to take a closer look at that and come back at a later time for a proposed amendment if that's the way we did it.
The child care locations that I'm at least aware of are largely in strip malls or in a standalone building in other communities. And I don't know that there are or aren't any in a church. I don't know. But I think it would be odd that a for-profit entity would be in a church.
I mean, churches certainly have facilities for their members, for the children during services,
Certainly.
but a commercial operation is different. I understand.
Well, I think there are churches though that do have daycare. I know for a fact my grandkids have been in them. They're not in the town, but they do exist. And I kind of feel as though you can I would be allowed, for the B1 I think you're right, John. I think that it does turn into a business in some cases. They do this commercially. So it probably could be in both.
The other thing I'd raise is that nursery school isn't exactly, by definition, a daycare or childcare, but the uses operate very similarly, right? Small kids get dropped off and they either get educated or they get looked after for a period of time, and then their parents pick them up and take them. So it really, you're looking at the same set of issues with either one, and that is a permitted use in P1. It kind of just comes down to whether or not a for-profit business would operate in a church. But again, in this specific instance, the person operating it, I don't think she's not affiliated with the church. She's a member of the congregation who would be operating the facility.
Okay. Is the petitioner here tonight?
No, they are not here.
I personally would lean towards allowing it in one of the B districts or all of the B districts as Planner Malarkey would look into it.
Sorry that I came in late, but for 16 years I ran a nonprofit preschool and we operated in churches all over Waukesha County. So, but this is a for-profit.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. So the concept isn't new in terms of having a preschool in a church. It's the for-profit that is at question here.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have an opinion on that?
Not yet.
And I guess, the issue of for-profit or not, I'm saying for-profit because it's open to the public. So they're taking money. They'd be taking money to watch kids, but in the end, I don't know if it's still under the umbrella of nonprofit or not.
I'm going to throw one thing in because I've heard this discussion over the last 30 years, where they should be, where they shouldn't be. We amended the code in Sussex so that Quad Graphics could have one, for instance, a manufacturing zoning district. And in that, a lot of that discussion was there's appropriate places and there's not appropriate places. And they had to be very specific when they were going to allow it in a factory. like quad graphics. And so I think the ultimate decision in that community was, we're going to make these CUs, and not a miscellaneous CU, we're going to make them CUs. Because then you can talk about the traffic concerns and the dropping off and picking up concerns and how much parking. I mean, other than, you know, graduation night, if there is such a thing, they don't need a lot of parking. You know, you had them in churches, so you had the parking there, but you didn't need that parking other than 1 or 2 times a year if you had some special event. And so that's why some communities, and Sean can go and research all this, decided they should be their own type of CU.
I would only add, in this case, if we're talking about the P1 zoning district here, and we're not talking about industrial uses and so on, and I agree that that's a good point, but in P1 we already allow schools and hospitals and churches and all high traffic generation uses. So a daycare isn't going to be out of the ordinary for those districts.
Well,
There's nothing there that
the problem isn't that they're a standalone daycare in that district. They're whether they're good partners with everything that's in that district. That's my concern with just saying the chairman's comment that it should be in every business district as a permitted use.
So a nursery
it
school,
may not be a good partnership.
but a nursery school is a good partnership because it's a permitted use.
First, I think we all agree we have no idea what a nursery school is because you already told us it doesn't exist. It's not something that the state regulates, codes, and we have no definition. What is a nursery school?
Nursery school is an old-fashioned word.
Right.
In fact, the preschool that I ran was a nursery school, and when I was on the board of directors, we actually changed the name. We went through the application of the state and named it to a preschool. But nursery school, preschool are synonymous.
But did you provide education?
Yeah.
So that's the difference between a daycare.
Well, daycare and preschools are governed by the same code. We have the same licensure. We have the same oversight from the state. In fact, that's one of the reasons that it was most difficult to be just a preschool and not a nursery or not a daycare, because the rules apply. All of the rules apply to us, but we weren't there all day long. And I don't know what the hours of operation. I haven't.
We don't have a proposed
Yeah.
use yet. It's just it's a general.
But it's not a daycare.
But what's not a daycare?
Is this just going to be a preschool slash?
I don't
nursery
know
school?
ultimately if it ends up being providing education.
We don't
or
have
not,
any of that. Okay.
But they,
okay.
but as of now, they're not. That wasn't discussed.
You know, there are a number of, in fact, one of the things that led to me changing careers is that the churches were seeing they saw it as a way to invite new members into their church, and so many of the churches that we were renting from actually started their own preschool slash nursery schools because they thought it was a way to engage more young people in their congregations, and they're still existing today, and that's been 12 years ago that I left that industry.
So can you tell us, do you have any ideas about the difference between a daycare and a nursery school?
Well, the way daycares run, it's a babysitting service, you know, for parents who are working. It might be a 12-hour a day, could be longer than this. In terms of preschool, you generally don't have young children there more than 3 hours because their attention span isn't good longer than 3 hours. It could be 2.5 to 3 hours. And it's an educational environment. There's a curriculum. There's usually a set number of children per teacher. We had 2 teachers and no more than 20 kids in a classroom. And we operated half days from 9 to 11:30. So I would assume a similar nursery schools or daycares, or preschools would do the same. I think the definition, we need to figure out what it is.
I agree.
But I have no problem with them co-locating in the church.
Okay.
But even short of finding out what it is, it'd still be nice to make a determination to say, okay, preschools are okay, because nursery schools is already allowed. We already know that, right? So if we said nursery schools are allowed, but daycares by themselves are not allowed, then we could tell them that.
Is there a definition in our ordinances of what a nursery school is?
It does, and I looked up online a little bit to see if I could find. And it's basically it's an educational curriculum for kids, basically from like 3 to 5 years old or something.
But she's already indicated, okay, the correct terminology would be preschool. And they're 3K
3K, 4K, 5K, is those terminologies synonymous, or is that different than a preschool?
It depends, well, I think what's being taught in the 3K, 4K, if you're in the public school, is very similar, almost, it's going to be very similar to what it would be in a nursery school or preschool. 5K, usually preschools don't do 5K, 5-year-olds, because they're already in kindergarten.
So, did the petitioner talk to you about the age of children that are going to be coming in? Because you just mentioned that nursery is
Right.
3, 4, 5.
Right. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
off the top of my head.
She called it a daycare.
She did call it a daycare.
Oh, she did call it daycare.
She called
Okay.
it a daycare.
Okay.
And that's where, at least for discussion purposes, I see it in the way Renee has explained it. It's totally different. I think La Casa's daycare starts at 5 in the morning and goes till midnight.
Right.
That's a whole different thing than having kids there for 3 hours a day who are only 2, 3, and 4 years old, or 3 and 4 years
agree.
old. So I don't think a preschool, our word is nursery school, is all as synonymous. Now, it may be a similar use to, and that's your point, that when you read, and that's why you carefully delineated all of the other uses in the P1 district to say that it's similar. But I think we have to get off that nursery school is the same as a daycare, because I think
no, it's different.
I think
La Casa's is, some of them are almost 24 hours a day for third shift parents nowadays, aren't they? And they let the kids sleep there.
I would say this should probably be tabled to March 14th and ask the planner to get some more information and perhaps have the petitioner next time so that we can adequately address some of these questions.
Which information would you like?
How long, where is she going to, not where, how often is she going to operate, what hours, what are the ages of children,
But
how
that's
many?
a specific use. This is we need the big picture. This is here, that's why they're not here, because you're trying to decide for the
Commercial
whole
daycare.
town, where would these be appropriate and how they should be regulated. A permitted use is totally, well, not totally different anymore than a conditional use, but is a little different than a conditional use.
Yeah.
They can be accessory uses. You can say there can only be accessory to churches. You know, right? I mean, you can
That's
write
right.
it any way the board wants to
Yeah, that's
write
right.
it.
So where do daycares fit in the code?
In my opinion, if it's a for-profit business, it should be in a business
In the
district.
commercial district?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the feeling of the plan commission?
He thought that if it was a for-profit, it should be in a business district. And then you could always have the accessory use, if it's accessory to a church or accessory to school, that could become in as part of, but then it's not a for-profit. It's I'm sure I'm not saying most, I'm sure there are many churches who provide daycare during the service. Now, they don't come in for, and I'm sure no one has a big problem with that. They probably don't charge for it, but they provide. We used to call it catechism, I think, in my day, but I'm dating myself.
Indeed you are.
Well, even Rose Glen, when my kids went, had daycare after school. And I'm sure that was for profit. That was somebody probably running it. Not
And
the school
where did they
district.
go?
Rose Glen. Yeah. Yeah, they had to pick up at 6 o'clock. My kids never used it, but I remember it because the gym.
One of the reasons that we closed the preschool is that the schools were asking us to come in and provide these before and after school services, and it wasn't feasible. But I don't know if it's a for-profit. I know there are some nonprofit preschools that are offering those wraparound services in the school district, and it started happening 12 years ago.
So we need to classify preschool and daycare separate, in my opinion.
I agree.
I mean, you can't combine those two because you got different drop-offs, different hours, different everything. You're not going to preschool at 8 p.m.
I agree.
So we are, as I mentioned in P1, we're allowed nursery schools already. We've equated that to preschool. So preschools are allowed in P1 as a permitted use. Sounds like daycare, you lean toward commercial use,
I am.
or only
but
when
I'm
it's
one of.
only when it's for money.
I I would say regardless, and I can't imagine that it's not a for-profit situation in most cases.
True, but churches are allowed to take money in. They're just, whether they're for-profit or not, they're allowed to make money.
I don't have, and I stated before, I don't have a problem with that use in a P1 zoning, whether it's for-profit or not, or taking money to defray expenses, or whether it's qualified as a donation or what or not. We're never going to sort that out. So I don't have a problem with it in a P1 or in the B zoning districts.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I would concur with what you said.
Okay. Mr. Flanagan?
Well, I think your recommendation is that we should let our planner there define everything, so we have something to vote on. That's gonna, because your point, it's going to be for the whole town. That way, we don't have to fight this battle twice.
I think that's a wise decision, and perhaps that you come back with a definition of what a nursery preschool is, or a nursery school, or preschool and daycare. What are those things?
So I could define them right now based on what I've heard. A preschool or nursery school provides education for kids before they're 5 or up to 5, and a daycare does not. It takes kids, it doesn't, it's a babysitting service, as
Correct, yeah.
Renee mentioned. So we should operate under that pretense in terms of that's the split. That's the definition.
All right. Do we want to talk about then, the hours that they can operate? And is this the appropriate time to do that?
Well, that depends.
No, I meant
you're only going
globally.
to have hours if it's a CU. You're not going to have. You're going to have a site plan and plan of operation if it's a permitted use, and it'll be analyzed on a case by case basis. And you can only put reasonable restrictions on a permitted use. That's it. It comes down to how much you want to regulate them. In a large respect, right?
Correct.
I guess just following up on that, I mean, that's an excellent point. This is, depending on, and I've designed some of these, the number of children involved and everything, as Renee indicated, those are going to be under the auspices of, I think, is it Department of Family Services or that type of thing. They're going to regulate, they're going to dictate.
Very strict.
The amount of space, they're going to do inspections, all that kind of stuff. That's really not our issue. I mean, they're going to be subjected to routine inspections, have to meet certain criteria for different age groups, all that type of thing. That's going to be highly regulated. I guess I look at this, I'm not that concerned. I mean, the number of these facilities that we might have in the town and the murky water that this gets into in terms of defining what is or isn't for profit, or there's a profit motive to it. I mean, this is for families and young children. I mean, I look at it as conditional use is something that the town ought to be able to regulate if there's some offending type of thing that might occur by that use. We need to put restrictions on it. I just don't see this if you want to call it nursery, preschool, daycare, whatever. I don't see in a public use or in a business use, I don't see how that is likely to be offending thing to the public at large, including hours of operation or that type of thing. I just don't see it in this instance.
So are you suggesting it becomes a conditional use?
No, just the opposite.
Okay.
Do we need to vote on this, or what is the?
We need to reach a consensus or table it, one or the other.
I'm all for P1, like I said before. We can put it under that general heading.
I don't think I would be opposed to it in P1 and business districts if it were a conditional use, so that there were some regulation available.
Well, good point, and I thought we were going to cover that under the site plan of operation when they come in though and do that. Is that not true or not?
You could, but I think you'd have more teeth under a conditional use.
Chairman Merrick, just, I mean, for Grin, you got some thoughts in your head. What, just in a conceptual thing, what conditions are you considering that we might want to try to impose on somebody operating a daycare, a nursery, a preschool, whatever you want to call it? What conditions are you thinking we might be looking to impose on them as a conditional use, regardless of the zoning?
Parking available, the number of children, the hours of operation, nuisance to other families or businesses or residences in the surrounding area? Is it going to be indoor, outdoor? Is there a component of outdoor play? Is that going to bother?
There has to be a component of outdoor play. It's regulated by the state.
Okay. I happen
To
to
answer your question, will they be playing outside? Yes, you have to require X amount of square feet in the building and out of the building and X amount of
Well, and knowing
supervision.
where this is, we actually were looking to move in and partner with this church 14 years ago. And so I know the space is adequate for a preschool school slash daycare. Right down the street is also a school that has outdoor play right on Merrill Hills Road. I'm in favor of us moving forward, whether it's a daycare or a preschool. I know that the state, the code that governs the daycare is very, very strict. So some of the things that we're talking about, I don't want to even get into that because the state's already doing it. So they're going to tell them how many kids they can have. They're based on the square footage, how many teachers they have to have.
Understood. I get that. I own a building with a daycare in it, and one of the frequent, the neighbors, and it is a conditional use in that municipality. And one of the neighbors, not one of the neighbors frequently are trying to get their conditional use revoked because of all the noise in the outside play areas. So I think that's probably something that we should be concerned with and look at.
Trying to remember here, don't we have one already in the town on Industrial Drive or some kind of daycare at one time? Didn't we do that? Yes. We already have an existing, because I remember this idea of a conditional use came up then, and we had to regulate hours of operation because the neighbors were concerned about kids running around outside at certain hours of the day. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but I thought it was on Industrial Lane, but I might be wrong on that.
I don't recall.
Yeah.
But again, I'd be in favor of it in both zoning districts as long as it was a conditional use. Brian, you want to weigh in?
I agree. I mean, I understand the state regulates it and stuff, but let's say it's 300 children. Maybe it's too much noise. I'm just using that as an example. They could have 40 teachers for all we know. They could have 70 teachers. We don't know that. It could be a large size.
And Commissioner Ramirez,
I meant in the future for anything. We're talking about the future of it.
I think you're in favor of not a conditional use, but a permitted use. Okay, Commissioner Stigler?
Giggles and giggly hugs, yeah.
I'm okay with it in the P1.
Because we do the personal property tax for that.
District, I guess that's fine too.
As a conditional use or permitted use?
As a permitted use.
Okay.
In the B1 district.
I would echo him as a permitted use. All of the policing and everything is going to happen by the agencies that are going to govern it.
Some.
Well,
That's not entirely accurate, as I mentioned.
well, but it isn't only the town. Don't they have to get licenses from the state level?
I understand, but the state's not going to care about kids that are outside making a lot of noise that are bothering the other residences in the area. State doesn't get involved with that.
I think what John is saying is then we can police more the fencing, the screening, and all
But-
that kind of stuff.
We can do that.
I think the question you have to ask yourself, though, aren't schools a permitted use?
Yeah, so I have 2 points to make.
So can I just finish up on that? Maybe you're going to jump on that. But if schools are a permitted use, then you got to come up with a justification to make nurseries, preschools, daycares a conditional use, but schools with some of those same issues you might have talked about with children making noise and everything, they're all there. It doesn't make sense to me to make daycare, childcare, nursery a conditional use when schools are permitted use. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, that was my point. I mean, there's ball fields and play fields and everything associated with schools, and those don't get conditional use status. The other thing is that our site plan of operation does allow us to put conditions on permitted uses. We can ask for fencing and regulate hours of operation and make sure that the play area is in the right spot. I mean, we can do all those things. It's a permitted use, but we do get a crack at making sure it fits in and is buffered and everything else. So,
All right. Commissioner Flanagan, you said permitted. Supervisor Miller.
Yes. I'm sorry. Say again?
You're Flanagan. I'm past you. I'm on to Miller already.
See, you were
Budweiser's next.
Without having all the knowledge from the state, the
So we've got 1, 2, 3 conditional and 4 permitted. So that's your
Yeah, it's 4-3. It's 4-3, 4 permitted and 3 conditional.
So we are saying then, the plan commission is saying it's a similar enough use to a nursery school that it's permitted in the P1 district.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The determination is that it's similar enough, the classification is that it's similar enough to a nursery school that it's allowed, it's permitted in the district. We already allow schools in the district which are probably much more disruptive to a neighborhood potentially, that this fits right in.
Fair enough. All right, I think we beat that horse to death. On to 10, accessory building and waiver for petitioner Michael Schneff, located at South 53 W23855 Glendale Road, tax case WAKT 13999980003. This is for discussion by the Plan Commission and Town Board and possible action by the Plan Commission and Town Board. And Planner Malarkey, take it away.
Thank you. The petition is requesting approval of a 12-foot by 18-foot, which is 216 square feet, accessory building to be used as a garden shed on the property. It's proposed to match the residence. They provided pictures of the home and the proposed structure itself. There's already an accessory building on the property that's 26 feet by 82 feet, which is just over 2,100 square feet for that particular building. That's used as a hobby garage for vintage cars and for fishing hobby accessory storage. The property is zoned R1. It's 1.08 acres in area. This typically allows, under our ordinance, up to 1,200 square feet of accessory building area. They're already in excess of that. They're above 2,100 already with a large accessory building. They'd be adding this small shed. They're asking for a waiver from the Plan Commission for that shed. Besides the fact that it is in excess of the size of the square footage in aggregate, it meets all other code requirements in terms of compatibility, in terms of setbacks, offset, height, etc. When I met with the petitioner, I did inform them that waivers and modifications aren't typically issued, and similar requests have been denied unless exceptional circumstances exist. They asked to come forward anyways and pitch their case. They have provided written documentation of the waiver that they're requesting. I've outlined in my staff report the process to consider and grant a waiver. The Town Board, upon receipt of recommendation from the Town Plan Commission, shall make a determination which shall include consideration but not necessarily an affirmative finding of factors listed A through F in my staff report.
Is the petitioner here this evening?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Anything to add?
Just
Come on up.
Good evening, everybody. I know that I understand the garage is well over the limit, but there's classic cars in there. I hope to retire in a few years and continue that. And I just don't want all the stuff that's in the garage that could be in a shed. I just don't want to deal with it. And I understand that not everybody has a hobby like I do. So, and I do have both sets of neighbors here that support me and have no problem with it.
So, Planner Malarkey, was there a waiver granted for the existing structure?
I don't know when that was permitted. I wasn't here at the time. I don't think so.
Because that should have needed one, right?
Yeah, because of the size.
Okay.
Though I don't know when that was
Yes.
built. Do you have an idea when it was built?
It was built in two sections. The first section was built in 1995, and then about 2014, I added on to it with the waiver.
With the waiver granted.
So then just the other question for the petitioner, I want to be clear that you have a 2,100 foot garage for your toys and you're talking about building a 200 square foot shed for your wife?
Correct. It's a she shed.
You have a good wife.
You know what? You are so right. You are so right. You have no idea.
Well, your own confession sheet, awesome.
You're right.
The board and the plan commission are faced with, we have routinely turned down accessory building permits if there wasn't some sort of hardship in there. And it would be difficult to go backwards on that and permit one when we have routinely turned them down in the past.
Right.
So that, I don't think I could get behind it because of past practice of the board and the plan commission.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm only one of 7.
Correct.
Any? Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been there 27 years, and
hopefully you'll look at our case separately than all the other ones, I guess. Not that we just want more room.
Does it matter that all the neighbors are here that are right next to them? You look out, it's beautiful.
I appreciate it, but you need to come up to the microphone if you're going to speak. But it's not a popularity contest. It's not a public hearing. We really can't get involved in that type of thing. And I appreciate what you're saying, that you're not opposed to it, but again, it sets a precedent, and we've set a precedent in the past about what we grant waivers for, and I don't remember granting one in recent history.
Shouldn't it be taken on a case-by-case basis, though?
We do look at it on a case-by-case basis, and
that doesn't necessarily work to your benefit. You already have almost twice as much as everybody else is allowed. So the argument would really be on a case-by-case basis. You already have so much more than everybody else. So I don't know that the case-by-case basis works to your favor. Okay. You already have, 900 more than anybody else is allowed. Okay. So I wouldn't push that one too hard. In all honesty,
Sure. No, that's fair. I get it.
Chairman Merrick?
Yes.
I don't need to repeat everything you said, but I agree with you completely.
Really?
Oh.
This is being recorded, right? It froze over.
No, but Mr. Fisher, you've been consistent in the past. You don't believe in waivers or modifications. If the code should be amended, the code should be amended. To paraphrase what you've said in the past, correct?
Thank you.
I don't know what else to say. Plead our case, I guess. Would you like to come see the property and see where it would be and see how nice it would fit in? You're welcome. Come join us out there.
Again, it's not about how nice it would be or anything like that. It's what the ordinances allow, and what you've been allowed previously, and past practice and policies of the board and plan commission. And it's as Planner Malarkey told you up front, it just doesn't happen. I don't ever recall, and perhaps you could prove me wrong, I don't recall that the board or plan commission has approved a waiver in recent history, and that would, for me, that'd be the last 6 years.
This was 2014. He said.
Well, perhaps that did perhaps that did happen. But is there a motion from the plan commission?
Motion to deny the request.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. From the, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. And is there a motion from the town board?
I move we accept the recommendation of the plan commission.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Please note that was you, Mike. That was you, correct, Mr.
Yes.
Durr? Thank you. Hearing number 1. Notice is hereby giving that a joint public hearing involving the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Town of Waukesha Board will be held on Thursday, February 14th, 2019, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at the Waukesha Town Hall, located at W250 South 3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin. To hear proposed rezone for the petitioner Nancy Washburn, agent to MC Home Builders, LLC, tax keys WAKT 143-499-4002 to rezone 16.83 acres from existing RE single-family residence estate with a portion under high groundwater and C1 conservancy overlays, conditionally rezoned in 1997 to a minimum lot size of 5 acres. Proposed zoning of R1 single-family residence with a minimum 1 acre lot size is requested. Description of the property is Lot 2, CSM 9965, Volume 9347, recorded as document 3246-935, part northwest of the quarter and southwest quarter section of 35 T6N. And we can open the public hearing at this time. Planner Malarkey.
Mr. Chairman, do you need me to recuse myself from this one again?
It'd probably be a good idea.
Can I sit up here or can I have to go out there? Go out there. Okay, thank you.
You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as you mentioned, this is for a rezone from RE estate, residence estate, to R1 single-family residence. They're looking to do an 8-lot subdivision. The Plan Commission has heard and recommended approval of a comprehensive plan amendment for this property, which is awaiting town board approval through ordinance potentially later tonight. That process followed our public participation plan, and there's a series of meetings that were held, including public hearing. The comprehensive plan amendment would allow what they're requesting to do. Essentially, the comprehensive plan amendment would allow the possibility between about 16 and 36 lots, contingent upon zoning and configuration. They're proposing 8 lots with 4 outlots. The gross density of the development would be 2.10 acres per dwelling unit, with 41% of the area preserved in lots for open space. The lots that they're proposing, they do have a conceptual plan put forward. You can see it up on the screen. The lots are in yellow. The open space is in green. There's the utility, the power line easement that's dotted here in red, sort of a 150-foot easement that goes through the property there. Elm Tree Lane would be extended into a cul-de-sac to service these lots here, and then it would be extended further to the south to provide access to the property. I think it's parcel 4 of a CSM further south, and then eventually potentially connect to Coyote Crossing subdivision further south. The length of the cul-de-sac meets the code. The lot sizes and configuration, lot widths meet our code as well. So this is basically context for you in consideration of the rezone request. The petitioner has had discussions with ATC regarding the easement itself. There is the tower here, and the line, the high tension power lines do continue south from the property, then east across Big Bend Road as well. I think what's been mentioned is that the primary concern of ATC at this time is that the grading remains undisturbed adjacent to their poles, and that they will not give final approval until the grading plans are prepared, and that would happen at the next stage, which is the platting stage for the property. So there's some wetlands in the property in the northeast corner. Those have been delineated. Some high groundwater areas that are primarily left in the outlots, leaving buildable areas within the lots themselves. Stormwater has not been approved by the county yet, but the county has suggested that because of the topography that there be some stormwater on the west side of the property. Sure. Sure, no problem. On the west side of the property, there's some stormwater management that's the county is proposing. There'll also be some stormwater management in outlot number 1 as well. They've done soil testing for mound systems. It looks like mound systems will work with all of the lots themselves. So If the Town Plan Commission chooses to recommend approval of the proposed rezone, I have prepared 5 conditions. Conditions include limiting the development to a total of 8 lots in a layout generally consistent with the conceptual plan presented tonight, that the rezone approval is contingent upon the comprehensive plan amendment approval by the town board. The rezone will not be in full force and effect until the subdivision plat is recorded, and the petitioner shall provide approval from ATC for use of the lands within the 150-foot easement for rights-of-way and outlots prior to subdivision plan approval, and then our standard reimbursement clause.
Thank you. Any questions for either the petitioner and or Planner Malarkey?
Yeah, good. Just one quick Planner Malarkey. Just tune us back to condition number 2 there and tell us what we did in the past months as contingent on town board approval of the amendment of the comprehensive development plan for the land use plan. Everything we did not act on that, didn't we?
So the Plan Commission did recommend approval. The ordinance has not been signed by the town board.
Okay.
That's on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, all right, so through the Plan Commission, not town board. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public?
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Chairman. He can probably answer it faster than I can look it up. So can you refresh my memory to the zoning of the subdivision to the north?
That's R1.
And to the subdivision, or to the residences to the south on Big Bend Road?
The residences to the south,
Yep,
directly
right there.
south,
Yep.
that's estate.
Okay, that's a state. And then what about to the west?
Environmental corridor to the west.
And then to the east?
East across the road, across Big Bend, is the estate as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? We could open it up to public comments if there are any. Good evening.
I'm Greg Winchell.
Give me 1 second here, and I'm going to write down your name for the clerk. Where are our notes?
Do we need to take a short break?
Yeah, why don't we stand by for a few minutes until the clerk gets back. Okay, we are back live. So name and address for the clerk, please. No problem.
I'm Greg Winchell, and I'm at W234 S5502 Big Bend Road.
Evening.
Good evening, everybody. Our concern, kind of representing some of our neighbors on Big Bend. So there won't be access onto Big Bend from this. Okay.
That's correct.
And then, so will they have access to 164 then, or how do they get into their housing tract?
Out of the subdivision that is directly to the north. There's a road that butts up to that property.
Okay, but Maplewood does come out onto Big Bend.
It does. So they could use, that's the access that they would use. Correct.
So they go Maplewood and then into that area, and then the extended road there that you're showing, the dead end right there. What is the property, say, would be south of that?
Yeah, so I have the aerial photograph up here. You can take a look. There's a large landlocked parcel to the west here. It kind of just touches this temporary cul-de-sac. So the idea is that the extension of that road through their property could potentially connect to Coyote Crossing at some point and provide access to parcel 4 here. Coyote Crossing is a temporary cul-de-sac. Part of the bulb is actually on private property. It's intended at some point to extend to the north, and so this is just recognizing that connection in the future.
Okay. And so it was 5 acre lots back in '97?
It was rezoned to residential estate from agriculture, but with a stipulation that they would be 5 acre lots.
Okay. And you probably could tell our concern is the other parcel then across the road, and what's that going to end up being as a precedence as well, because we understand there's 75 or 100 acres or so across the road that's up for sale, and
which one is that?
It's on, yeah, it's on Big Bend. That
is this?
All that is for sale right now.
Sean, add a layer to that for for wetlands and conservancy, would you?
Sure.
To that parcel that he's pointing out. If I recall correctly, there's a significant amount of wet there, but I could be wrong.
Well, yeah, you can see my property's right there. And with 20 acres next to us, we're concerned this will end up being the density of across the road. That's our question, and why we're asking.
Understood.
If this precedent happens, what's going to happen now on this side?
It's trying to load here. That is now. Yeah, I understand you could. There's the wetland layer.
And how about, can you put conservancy on also? Okay, so it's not as much as I recall, but
and so I touched a little bit on my staff report, but this property that we're talking about tonight, the comprehensive plan, was recommended for approval to change by the Plan Commission after 3 meetings and a public hearing last time. The board hasn't acted on it yet, but that in effect is the guiding force in terms of what you can and can't do with your property in terms of what the plan says. So that first step was taken. This is the next step through the rezone. So the property across the street, I don't know off the top of my head what that's planned for. I can look.
the direct answer to your question is it's depends on some future board at some point in the future. If somebody were to buy it and wanted to develop it, it's not a question we can answer for you tonight.
Sure, no, I understand, absolutely, completely understand.
Right.
Just
But what is the plan now?
The plan now is
RE.
suburban. The plan for the road, the property across the street, that large property, it's planned for suburban density 2, which is 3 to 4.9 acres per dwelling unit, which is what this property was planned for before it got changed. And so we looked at it. We looked at the surroundings. We looked at land to the west, and felt that it was logical to extend the neighborhood to the north into this property, and that's why the comprehensive plan got changed. And so if someone would come forward to the property that you're talking about, we'd look at that in a case-by-case basis in terms of whether or not it made sense to change the land use category for that to guide future rezonings at that time.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'd here publicly say it's a concern. We don't want the same density on that side to extend from there and just surround it all. So I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Hi, Nancy Washburn, petitioner for MC Home Builders. Thank you very much for having us here tonight, and I wanted to just kind of address a couple of the comments that came last meeting from a different neighbor who lives across the street on Big Bend Road. I think if you remember him, he mentioned that he had one time worked for our client, and I thought that was pretty funny. But what we wanted to do, and in your packets, we provided you with some of the home styles. They're kind of our top sellers that we envisioned being in the community. And I wanted to assure the town, the Plan Commission, as well as the board, as to the quality of homes that we perceive are going to be on this site. MC Home Builders is doing business as Mastercraft Builders. For a little history, from 1998 until 2008, when the recession came, I was the development coordinator for Mastercraft Builders. So I've built hundreds of miles of roads for them and watched them build thousands of beautiful homes. Certainly when they started in business 40 years ago, they weren't building this product, but they are now. These home styles are, as a for instance, you're looking at the Genesis. This is one of our most popular ranches. It's very, it has the separated master bedroom from the other bedrooms. It's 2,240 square feet as a starter package. Typically, these are custom homes, and so typically, like with a lot of the other builders like us, the people are going to come in, they're going to maybe add a little square footage. The 3-car garage on the property is standard, and that is, of course, of high demand today. And when we look at the beautiful features inside, the granite counters, the beautiful fireplaces, the gas treatment, the mantle treatments, the built-ins, and the finish of the rooms themselves as standard features, I think you would agree that you have a beautiful home to envision inside and out. Right now, as we're pricing out the lots, the value of the lots, just the cost alone, is around $100,000. So you're looking right there at, if you look at the lot and home package as approximately the lot being 25% of the package, you know, minimally you're looking at a home value in the $400,000 range, which I would anticipate these to be. Typically on the exteriors, the building materials are the hardy planks and the masonry. You can see the beautiful interior fireplace, the 2-story cathedral ceilings. So I wanted to just show you some of the exteriors of the homes. This is, again, another one of the ranches are very popular right now for everyone. Whether you're downsizing or whether you're, you know, looking to live with young children, everyone seems to enjoy the single-family home or the single-story home. And I wanted to show you some of these without landscaping, only because I wanted you to realize that these are the houses they're building right now in areas that they perceive to be very similar to what Hidden Hills will look like as well. This is the Carrington 2. This is a 2,400 square foot 2-story, and it has numerous elevation changes where, you know, you have, in this particular case, a 2-story entry, masonry and stone all the way to the 2nd floor. It also can be converted to look like much more of a traditional country 2-story. So again, it's a very flexible floor plan, 2-story, 4-bedroom homes. So the base prices for these homes start at $260,000 and go up to about $290,000. So again, adding the cost of the lot and the lot improvements in, you're going to see home values that will most likely well exceed $400,000. So I wanted you to have a good comfort level of what we're bringing to the neighborhood and so forth.
Thank you.
Additionally, in regards to the questions, I think Sean did a very good job of speaking to ATC. I've had a lot of experience lately with ATC, and they're very easy to work with. Under some of the power lines, we have stormwater management ponds. Their main concern is access. On our property, there's only one tower, and it's located up at the entrance to the new subdivision. As you can see up in the, right there where Sean's pointing, that's the only tower that's on the property. So they're going to be very happy that they're now going to have a public road in front of it. They're going to have very easy access for maintenance. The other concern to them is grade changes. They want to make sure that they have distance requirements from the ground up to the wires, and so they need to make sure that those distances are managed as well. And so once we get the stormwater plan done and the grading plan, that's when they want to see it, and they'll give their final review and approval for us. But we have talked to them about the property and are very confident that this works within their guidelines.
Okay.
All right, so thank you very much. Any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the petitioner and or Sean? Any other comments from the public? Then we can close the public hearing. And move on to 12, rezone for petitioner Nancy Washburn, businesses MC Home Builders. Location is Lot 2, CSM 9965, volume 9347. Recorded as document 3246935, part of the northwest quarter and southwest quarter section of 35 Town 6 North, Big Bend Road, 16.8 acres. Tax key is WAKT 143-499-4002 from existing RE single family residence estate. with a portion under high groundwater and the C1 Conservancy overlays. Proposed zoning of R1 single-family residence with a minimum 1 acre lot size. Is there a motion from the Plan Commission? And a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Are there any conditions in your report?
Subject to there are
5 conditions in the report.
Subject to the conditions. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to the town board. Is there a motion from the town board to accept the Plan Commission recommendation?
Also move.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. If there's no objections, I'd like to take the agenda out of order and move to 22, as we've got a representative from Waukesha Water District. Dan Dukniak is in the audience. And hearing no objections, we will do that. This is an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Waukesha, Great Lake Water Alliance return flow mains through the town of Waukesha. There's a return flow on Sunset. Dan, can you maybe help me out? Come on up. Don't be shy. Come on up. What's that? This is Dan Dukniak, the general manager of the Waukesha Water Utility.
And I did hurt my back this morning. That's why I'm walking funny. Sorry.
Shoveling snow?
Shoveling snow. Would have thought. So it's on Sunset. First off, I'm Dan Dukniak. I'm the general manager of the Waukesha Water Utility. I know most of you up here. But we're here with an intergovernmental agreement. It's pretty much the standard agreement since I've been here at the water utility since 2003. It's on Sunset Avenue. There's 2 portions where we go through the town. One is the town island by Sunset and West to Century, between Century and West, and then further just from Racine Avenue west about, I think it's 150 or 250 feet. So there's 2 sections where we go through the town, and we use an intergovernmental agreement. Basically what it says is we're going to follow your specifications for your roads, and when we restore it back to what it was, or when we go through there with the construction, and we'll do the inspection for you, make sure we're meeting your specifications. We'll provide you with the reports and all the information you need for as-building so that you have all of that information available to you. If there's ever any incidents in the future, we'd be responsible for repairing it and replacing it. And if there's ever any locating that's necessary, we'd be responsible for locating it. So again, I just went by the last agreement that we had, which was on the bypass, and now you're going to have to help me, Chairman Merrick. It was, the last one we had was by the cemetery.
Broadway, yes.
Broadway, on Broadway. So I basically went off of the Broadway template, and I wrote it up for this one. And I'm here to ask for your approval. Once it gets approved by you, we'll take it to, it'll go to the Water Utility Commission next week, and then it'll go to the Common Council after that, and it'll be executed.
Mr. Dukniak, do the town residents that this would run in front of, in all areas, do they have access to city sewer and water then?
All of the town residents that the water currently, or the return flow and the water currently passes by, do have access under previous agreements, because there is water that actually goes past that area. They wouldn't be able to tap into this main because this is going to be a higher pressure main, so they wouldn't be able to tap into this main, and obviously on Sunset that's a return flow main, so that's not drinking water. But there's already water that passes by on Sunset through the town island, water and sewer, and there's water that runs past the town island that's west of Racine Avenue, and they already have access to those utilities.
Question, if I...
And without annexation, they have access.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. That's part of the agreement.
Can that wording, and you anticipate my question, thank you, can that wording be put into the agreement? I mean, as I read it, maybe I read it wrong, but it says they have the ability to receive water connect. Can it be put in there without a requirement of annexation for the city?
I'm sorry, which one are you talking about? Because we added number 4,
right, which says
the mains will be installed, already have the ability to receive water utility service from the city.
I understand that. I'm just asking, would you object if the verbiage were added to it without a requirement to annex to the city.
That's fine, because it's per the previous agreements.
I understand that. I guess I'd just like to see that added into the
Okay.
agreement so it's clear. Thank you.
No problem there?
Yeah, I can add that.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Dukniak?
So does this also include the section of Sunset out towards Minooka Park just before Racine Avenue?
This
Yes.
area right here, yes.
Okay. And the note on item 5 for restoration of streets, the city shall be responsible at its sole expense for the reasonable restoration of rights of way in cities under which the mains are installed to be conditioned prior to any installation, maintenance, repair, or replacement, but not in an improved condition. That section of road, although it hasn't risen to the top of our list, as you can see from the town/city outline there, is a little bit of city, a little bit of town, a little bit of city, a little bit of town.
I'm sorry, which one are you talking about?
On Sunset, just west of Racine.
Okay.
It would be good if we could get together with the city DPW and have you guys do a new road for that section of road since it needs it.
Well, we're not only in that area, we'll be going all the way up Sunset in there. So the water main, the only area that's highlighted are specifically to what's in the town.
Okay.
But actually that main goes all the way from Racine Avenue to the bypass and then along the bypass.
Via Sunset?
Via Sunset.
So you would anticipate that Sunset would be all new road from Racine to the bypass?
I believe it is, but I'd have to go back and get an answer out for that for you.
Well, I would love to know that and not have it in item 5 to be ended with, but not in an improved condition. Because I would like to, from the town's point of view, I understand that it's mostly city, but from the town's point of view, I'd like to see that to be a new road when we're all done.
And I don't know what the intention is for that entire road, but I can go back and check on that.
Okay, that's what I'd like to know before I could get behind it.
Again, this is the standard language that we used in the past.
Okay.
Supervisor Dirk, could you possibly get behind it if there was a stipulation that the water utility would come back and state that it will be a new road?
Sure.
Okay.
Maybe just a kind of a follow-up question that looking at the conceptual drawing here, but in that section of road, where is the, if I'm reading this right, there's a new water supply and a new return flow pipe both there?
Correct. That's why I think the whole road is going to be replaced. Because
do you know, or maybe it's not determined, do you know where those are relative to the pavement or not? Are they under the pavement or adjacent to it?
I believe
yet to be determined.
In Sunset, I believe we are under the pavement.
Okay.
So I believe it will be an entire new road. So that's, and there's 2 lines going through there at that location.
Yeah, I see.
So,
Okay,
and they're both, I believe, 36-inch lines. So I think we're going to be using the entire road.
Sure. Go ahead.
Hi. I just had a question. When we did Broadway,
yes,
and we made that agreement, I believe we put in there the tax keys, so specific, that would have the access to the water, and that might be something you might want to see.
We did, however, all of these residences and businesses are under a previous agreement. They're not adding anything or taking anything away. They're just letting us know that this has already happened. It's
right. On Sunset from Century to West, I believe most of them are connected already.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I just wanted to make sure we were consistent. That's all.
Okay.
But there's also the homes on Sunset from Racine to the bypass.
Right, and I believe there's already water main that runs past there also. So there's already, the utility is already there that provides service to those residents in the city and those subdivisions.
And they can connect.
And they can connect, correct.
And we're going to specify without annexation to the city.
Yes, I'll add those words.
Good, okay. Thank you.
Supervisors, one more thing on this. The when we did the Broadway, I sent out letters to all the property owners. Do we want to be consistent and do that, to let them know they have that access, even though they may have had it before, but to give the homeowners really the kind of a cleanup and let
And the
them know.
property owners already have been notified by us that we were doing work in the area because we've sent out letters. So they've already been notified by us with regards to that.
Okay, thank you.
I guess in answer to your question, maybe it's not the highest priority, and you could talk about timing, but at some point in time, I think that would be a nice thing to do, to notify them. What's the loosely timing on any of this, or that?
Well, we're anticipating that we're going to have the permits in hand by the third quarter of this year, and then we'll begin the process of bidding out. And we'll bid out at the end of this year, early next year, and start awarding, and construction will start next year. As to the timing, the construction will take place between 2020 and 2023. So 2020, 2021, 2022 construction seasons, and then we'll transition over to the new water supply in 2023. I don't know how the contractor is going to stage that yet, where they're going to start, because there's a booster station and storage in Manuka Park on the southeast corner. Medical Park in Racine, and I think it's Schwartz Road. I don't know. I always get mixed up there. But so I don't know if they're going to start there and which way they're going to come. But as soon as we know, we'll let the residents know. And we plan on. There's going to be a lot of communication. If you take a look at our website, there's a lot of communication on our website, so people will know when that construction's happening. Letters will be sent out. Flyers will be put on people's doors. We've had a lot of communication with the public already, and we plan to continue that throughout the project.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Waukesha Great Water Alliance return flow mains through the town of Waukesha, with the addition of the specification that people will be able to connect without annexation to the city, and the replacement of Sunset from Racine to the bypass.
Second. Any further discussion? Oh, and would you guys mind if the attorney reviewed that?
That'd be excellent.
Friendly amendment to your motions? Thank you.
And I would ask then, could you make those two changes and then send it to Kathy?
Sure.
And then so I don't have to review it twice?
Sure.
So, and just for clarification to Mr. Supervisor Dorr, do you want the subject to there being the new road Racine to the bypass in the agreement, or is that just, we might as well put it in as long as we're amending the agreement to make the other one without the requirement of an annexation to the city was the exact words that Mr. Fisher said. Okay, so you'll put those two changes in, send it to Kathy, and she'll review it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Back on track. We are on thank you. 13, hearing number 2, notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing involving the Town of Waukesha Plan Commission and the Town of Waukesha Board will be held Thursday, February 14, 2019, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at the Waukesha Town Hall, located at W250 South 3567 Center Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin, to hear a termination of conditional use for petitioners Todd and Patricia Klotz on the property located at W274 South 4640 Salesville Road, Town of Waukesha, and the City of Waukesha. Tax key numbers are WAKT 1372996003 and WAKC 132996004. And that's a retired parcel, WAKT 13729960002, document WC 26600010003. The description of the property is incredibly long. Part of the southeast quarter and southwest section 19 and part of the northeast quarter in section 30, T6N, R19E, Com SE corridor section 19, south 01, 30 east, 27.0 feet that begin south 01, 30 east, 722.70 feet, north 71, 27 feet west, 2,793.97 feet north, 42, 18 east, 312.97 feet north 39, 55 east, 523.30 feet, south 69, 39 east, 2194.5 feet south, 01, 30 east, 27.06 feet south 69, 39 east, 27.06 feet to begin on R27201535. And at this time, we can open the public hearing. And Planner Malarkey, take it away.
Thank you. The petitioner is requesting a termination of the conditional use that was issued by the town of Waukesha in 2001. It was issued for the development of a 1-acre irrigation pond for a tree nursery and a landscape business on the original 42-acre parcel. In 2013, just under 13 acres was annexed by the city of Waukesha. Construction of the pond never occurred. Property owners have no plan to actually construct it. The conditional use was recorded as a deed restriction on the property, and the property owners would like to terminate the conditional use in order to remove the deed restriction. A portion of the property is also under shoreline jurisdiction because of the river there, the Fox River. They did issue a conditional use permit as well for earth-altering activities in conjunction with the construction of an irrigation pond for the tree nursery and the landscape business. I do not know if that conditional use also applies, but the town can only act on its particular conditional use. And so in our ordinances, there's a provision of how a conditional use actually terminates, and it basically works like this. After public hearing, the Plan Commission determines any of the following. The conditional use has not continued in conformity with the conditions of the permit. A change in the character of the surrounding area or in the conditional use itself causes such use to be no longer compatible with surrounding uses, or the conditional use has been discontinued for a period of 12 consecutive months or 18 cumulative months in a 3-year period. So, with that said, I do have a recommendation here for a particular motion. The Town Plan Commission, after public hearing, has determined that the conditional use allowed per the conditional use permit issued on May 10th, 2001 by the Town Board and filed as a deed restriction for the property located at West 274, South 4640, Salesville Road, Waukesha, Wisconsin 53189, original tax parcel WAKT 137-299-6002, was never commenced and has been discontinued for a period of exceeding 12 consecutive or 18 cumulative months in a 3-year period and is therefore terminated if the Plan Commission chooses to agree with my findings.
Thank you. I have just one really quick question, and I don't know how that it plays into this. I'm just curious, for my own edification, does the city also have to vacate?
The city didn't issue the original conditional use permit, so they would not be. Okay. Attorney Macy, correct me if I'm wrong. Because the town issued the permit that encompassed the entire original parcel, it's the town's responsibility to remove the conditional use permit, even as it exists on the town and the city's property.
Well,
or does it not exist on the city's property?
No, most communities, when it annexes in, acknowledges, the CU from the other community, and we have no jurisdiction to deal with it any longer. So if they wanted it, they'd have to deal with the city to some extent. So, I mean, when an annexation occurs and there's a conditional use,
it goes along with it. So, but the motion, or the action I have outlined tonight, would rescind the conditional use permit as it was issued for the entire property at that time. Mm-hmm. Whether it still exists in the city, then, is my question.
Okay. Can we talk to the petitioner, because they've spoken with the city, and this is one of the requirements.
Come on up. Yes, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Todd Klotz. My address is West 274, South 4640, Salesville Road. As I understand it, and I've worked with the county extensively, that conditional use has to be vacated by the town. It was, when the whole property was in the town, it applied to the entire property. When I annexed off that 13 acres, that conditional use went with it. When you vacate it, that will take it off of the city property. The city can't remove that because they didn't place it on the property.
Understood.
So if you guys vacate it, evidently, I assume you would notify the city.
I'm going to say I agree that that might be what the city told you, but think about what you're saying. I own a property and I have a conditional use and I annex that property into the city and the neighbors don't like that conditional use, they can go to the town and take the CU away from me? I don't think so. You know what I mean?
But the neighbors aren't taking it away, I'm taking it away.
Hypothetical
Yeah.
situation.
That's not the point. But if the city wants to declare that it doesn't exist anymore because of our action, that's a city decision. All we can do is act on what we're acting on here.
Very good.
And I can't make any representations for the city.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions for Sean or the petitioner? Any comments from the public? Going once, going twice, one at a time, folks. Then we can close the public hearing and move on to 14, request for termination of conditional use permit for owners Todd and Patricia Clocks on the property located at W274 South 4640 Salesville Road in the town of Waukesha. Is there a motion from the Plan Commission for termination of the conditional use permit? And a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And on to we don't need board. We do not need anything from the board, correct?
That's what I was told.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Motion for adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. You are adjourned. Have a good evening, guys and girls. Let's take like a 2-minute break while they get out.
Wait till your grandchildren start.
Yes, ma'am.
My comp plan amendment is still on the agenda. Yeah, the comp plan amendment for this property.
Okay.
Under the town board agenda. And, I was wondering if you would be willing to take it out of order, or an hour drive home, and I am assuming the DPW discussion could last a while. But I'm just wondering if you would take the comp plan order item out of order, unless you think I don't need to be here. I don't know.
And where are you?
Ordinance here for the comprehensive, yeah, it's item 21. And you've got all the discussion.
Yeah, you should be here. Yes, I can.
Good to see you. Take care.
We did it once. We can do it twice.
Forgot about it.
I'm not as important as the
I didn't get anything
but I
special.
do.
Your husband will be glad you forgot about it. He spent the night. He went over by his mom's. So he knew I was going to be here. So he took mom out for took her out for dinner. Didn't take me out for dinner.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm married 35 years. I don't expect. I know better.
That's good. Low expectations, more like
He is lucky.
I don't think it matters.
Good night.
Solve that
Good night.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Was Kathy in there?
I have a question for her. Do we really want to table this to a date certain? What if we got it all done? Fisher agreed to everything. And called a special meeting, machine, the city, and the public. I mean, I know I'm smoking a lot tonight, but if we table it till March 2014,
Yeah. Okay, so to a date uncertain.
no, your original motion was just to table it. Bring it back when they sit.
right, we are back in session. Again, out of courtesy to one of the petitioners, if there's no objection, we're going to take the agenda out of order. And I'd like to go to 21, if that's not a problem for anybody. And hearing nothing, we'll go on. Ordinance 2019-03 for comprehensive plan amendment for petitioner Nashi Washburn, agent to MC Home Builders, LLC, tax keys WAKT 143 49er 4002. Planner Malarkey. Nope, he's gone.
Last meeting at the Plan Commission approved the comprehensive plan amendments in a resolution. This is our next step, is the ordinance to complete the process.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to accept ordinance 2019-3.
In a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a good evening. On to discussion and possible action to reconsider the action taken on 11/8/2018 regarding the DPW building bid. In that, the site plan and plan of operation has not been approved and the bid documents were not in proper form. Is there a motion to reconsider?
Also moved.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Then we will take a vote. And all in favor?
So,
oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries. On to 17, discussion and possible action to deny all previous bids for the DPW building in that bid documents were not in proper form. Is there a motion? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
On to 18, discussion and action to authorize the town administrator to resubmit a request for bids for the DPW building. I'd like to make a motion to table this as we weren't aware that all of the bid documents are not complete. They will be completed shortly. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 19, discussion and possible award of the 2019 paving bids. Supervisor Durr, do you want to?
Yes, I'll make a motion to accept the paving bids for the following roads: Hazelwood Place, Riverview Drive, Crest Drive, Lois Lane, and Getz Drive, and that amount totals $276,695 to be awarded to Payne and Dolan.
I will second that motion. Discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe Kathy can pick up on it, but I sent over, and I think you get in the packet, question or concern about Getz Drive, and it took some photographs and so forth. The section that I believe is, and Engineer Janelli might be able to confirm this, but the part that's west of where the private road takes off, I think that's 300 and some odd feet roughly in length. I think that's part of the scope of the work, and I went over that, took a bunch of photographs, and there are huge, most of them are cottonwood trees and that type of thing. I actually met with a property owner there. There's a couple of oaks, but they are incredibly, I mean, some of them are at the edge of the pavement that goes through there. Photographs I had, some of them are, I mean, they're kind of taking the snow, but there's root structure that's lifting them up and so forth. We won't be able to get that standard road section through there that I think is 32 feet to the outside of the shoulders, and I mean that existing pavement I don't think is anywhere near 24 feet at this point in time. So the question is about some of the time, a couple of questions. Is there anything in the bid that requires a paving contractor to do tree root removal, some of it's heaving the pavement, stump grinding or not, and if there isn't, is that something that we would undertake to do independent and apart from that as a separate contractor with our own people?
Engineer Janelli?
To answer the first question, there's nothing in the bid about the trees. I think when we were putting this together, we were I drove the road as well, and it's very substandard. It's pretty narrow. But it was my understanding that we didn't want to make it a full typical road section because that would take probably more than the town's budget to do.
The entire budget for paving?
Yeah, probably the entire budget for paving. That would be very expensive.
How many residents are on that section?
5 or 6.
2?
I mean, there's probably 2 that front
2.
it, and then there's maybe 3 more or 4 more that would use it.
Beyond it.
Well, what do the bid documents call for?
Pulverize, shape, and pave 4 inches.
But how wide, I guess, is the question then?
Current width.
That's what the bid documents say?
Correct.
The bid documents don't call for it to be town standard?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So how wide would that be?
In most areas, it's like 18 feet.
Okay. Is it, I mean, I'll certainly support the motion on the paving part of it, but I guess I would not make it a formal part of it, but I guess I would ask, I mean, I would think we've got some time to do this. Wouldn't it be advisable to have public works people or something kind of inventory that and see whether it would be smart to take some of those trees down? The property owner told me that some of that was actually priced out once before, but I guess I just think we ought to investigate that a bit and see whether, and particularly because some of that is actually lifting pavement or that type of thing. I think that'd be a prudent thing just to, whether that's you, Chris, or whether it's with Jerry or something, but just to take a walk through that and see whether it would be smart to take some of those trees down.
Madam Administrator, would you be able to check with the DPW director and see to that?
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Anything further?
And to clarify, maybe, I'm just so I'm kind of clear. I'm hearing direction that we're going to kind of get together with Jerry and walk that, maybe inventory some trees that should get cut down or may need to get cut down. Are we giving direction to us to change order that into the contract or hire someone to cut the trees down?
It would be the DPW department, and you can get with the administrator tomorrow or the next days or whenever you're done with your extended vacation.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking to integrate it into the contract at this point in time. Maybe there's an easier way.
Just an evaluation more than anything?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I guess in the evaluation, are our people capable of taking those down if you determine that some should be, and when would they do it?
Okay, so I spoke with Jerry. We've had this discussion before when we discussed what was private and what was public. We did get a bid in the past on the large cottonwood trees that they would not be able to take down, but that he had stated that he would be able to take down the smaller trees just like he does on the regular roadway. It's just the very large cottonwood trees. They have a couple really large ones that he felt we needed to take a look at getting some quotes on getting taken care of.
So maybe you could make that available to Engineer Janelli, and that could be part of their review and recommendation.
Thank you.
I'll review that with him.
But I want to make it very clear in this motion, as the engineer has asked, no additional funds are being authorized. Any additional funds would have to come back to the town board for approval.
That's correct. Yep.
Other than what the DPW does on their own time.
Whatever they can take out of their budget as regular maintenance out of their budget.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. I mean, if the DPW is going to cut any trees down, that's just part of typical road maintenance.
Right.
So, while it sounded like the attorney had hesitation to that.
Well, he's talking about in its contract.
No, no. When we said DPW time, he hesitated. I just want to make sure.
The DPW, I didn't have any problem. As Kathy said, does it include them using their budget to hire other people? And I did hesitate on that because I don't know. I think we need to be very specific so that Kathy has
Any contracted work would have to come back to the board. Fair enough?
Thank you.
There you go.
All right. We've got a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 20, ordinance 2019-02 for comprehensive plan amendment for Maryland Hills Driving Range, tax key number WAKT 136-897-8003. Is there a motion?
Move to accept ordinance 2019-2.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to 23, continued discussion on accusation of illegal action taken by the town board.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for discussion on accusations of legal action taken by the town board.
I'll second.
So I ask that this be put on the agenda. We've stepped on this line a couple of times over the last couple of months. And it came up again in the January 10th meeting when we were preparing to go into closed session. And there was a comment made in particular by Supervisor Fisher. I believe it was that we stepped over the line and discussed things in closed session for which we had no business doing. There's been other times that accusations have been made about illegal activities of the board. We've had our attorney look into these activities as they were pointed out and received legal opinions from the attorney in both cases that no illegal action was taken. When we discussed this in the past, the accusations have been maintained, but to date there's been nothing to substantiate that from anyone with a law license. So since it came up again that the comment was made about stepping over the line and discussing things in closed session, which we had no business doing, I don't ever recollect that happening. So I just wanted to be clear that if somebody is concerned that there were actions taken in closed session that were illegal, I'd like to get them out in the open, understand what they are so that we can address them.
Sure, if that's directed to me, I'll give you one example of that. I don't remember the exact date, but the discussion of the creation of the administrator position commenced in closed session. The discussion of the creation of that position, I objected to it at that point in time and said that was appropriately a discussion for open session. That was eventually terminated and brought into open session. That's an example of that to which I speak, Supervisor Durr.
That's not accurate.
Okay, so I'd like to address my recollection of that case so that it's out in the public of what took place. I do agree with Supervisor Fisher that the initial discussion of an administrator position came up in closed session as we were in discussion and negotiation with, at the time, Clerk Treasurer Nicholas about her pending contract. And she brought to the board in closed session that she would like to have it considered by the board that she would also assume administrator duties, of which we didn't have at the time an administrator position. And within my estimation and my recollection of less than a minute, that was concluded by my recollection, everyone in the room, that if we were going to create a position of administrator, that needed to be dealt with in open session, which over the next several meetings in open session we did. So I don't see how somebody bringing up something as part of a contract negotiation and making a request and the members in the closed session agreeing that that's not appropriate for closed session and immediately terminating the discussion, like I said, in my recollection of less than a minute, how that would be considered an illegal illegal activity. But if that's something we want the attorney to look into, I would certainly be an advocate of that, because I want it clear on the record that, in my point of view, this town board has not done anything illegal.
Does anybody else have a differing recollection, Supervisor Wolf or Supervisor Radke?
No, as far as I remember, that's the way it was. It came up in her contract negotiation, and we decided not to go any farther with it. Just that it was there.
Supervisor Radke?
That's an accurate description.
Thank you. So, I guess, what was the illegal activity?
If that's everybody's recollection, that's fine.
I think, and I thank you, I think you just made my point that that was an appropriate place for that discussion. I'm the one that raised the issue, and I thank you for acknowledging that.
We didn't have a discussion. As soon as the issue was raised, we ended it and said it should be in open session. That's what we talked about. And we continued on with our contract negotiations. Anything else is absolutely false. Fake news, as they say. I guess we can move on to 24. Discussion and possible action for the purchase of additional road salt. Most communities and even the county is pretty much out of road salt. Clerk Nicholas did some digging and did find us some road salt someplace in Illinois, and also helped the county. Is the county also taking some of that salt?
No, they can't bring up the cash that quickly. They have 60 to 90 days to change their budget. So we have, I worked with Workman, and they got a quote for us on a price for salt. They are not upcharging it at all. They're just doing us a favor as a team member of our plow service. And the price of the per ton is $110 for the salt itself, and the freight, he estimates about $25 a ton. So we're looking at $135 a ton. After speaking with the county, we only have 185 ton left. That's all we have left. We're expecting snow this Sunday, and we owe some salt to Genesee, and we will need to repay them because they are short of salt as well.
How many tons total?
We have 185.
How many are we buying? I'm sorry.
We can, we can buy anywhere up to 600. I held on to 600 ton at this point. If anywhere up to that, but not over 600 ton, I don't have access to.
So that would be a payment of $81,000. Is there a motion? I'll make the motion to purchase the additional road salt. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
How much have we used this season so far?
1,234, and that was without what we took today. So we had 1,400. We have 108. 1,400. We had 100. We have 185 left without what we took today. We owe Genesee 40.
Okay. Can we do this? Is this within our budget?
We can do this within our budget.
Which is how much have we budgeted for expenditure for this year?
For our full, well, it's, remember, our budget is a full budget. It's not a line item budget. So we can comfortably put this in our budget.
How much do we have in the line item for salt?
Yeah, I didn't bring that with me. I'm sorry. You want me to run and get that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
She's got to write it down.
I can write it down.
It's only going to take her a minute to think about it.
Do you want to just adjourn?
Right, we have 90,000 in the 2019 line item worksheet. 90,000.
90,000 available or 90,000 total?
90,000 total. We have in our public works budget, we have 1,115,000. So we have
Okay, but
we are under budget,
On the 90,000 then is what we've got in the budget for salt.
and that's spoken for already. For the 1,400 that we
So we've
what we paid
expended how
our
much?
full budget,
We're fully
our
spent.
full line item, yes, but not the budget itself, but
I
the full
understand
line
that. I'm just dealing with light items. So
Okay.
now, if this motion is passed, we're, how much additional was it?
81,000.
The maximum would be 81,000.
So we'd be, with that part of it, we're up to like 170,000 then on salt
Correct.
purchase. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, question. Will that come as we need it, or where is that gonna be stored?
That would come as we need it, and it would be stored at the county.
Well, the county will, even though they can't buy it for themselves, we can store ours there.
Right. We can store it there. They will charge us the $10 a ton when we take it out, just like they do now with that's added on to our salt. Our salt cost was $77.80. That included the $10 surcharge for using their loader. They'll charge that on the way out, not on the way in. So when we take it out.
And then I guess one more question in terms of the total DPW budget, and we're only, what, halfway through February, but you envision there will be some place we'll be able to make up that $81,000 of overspending? Do you have something in mind?
No, I think at the time when we start looking at getting closer to our budget, at that time we might make some concessions. We've got some other road project money in the operating budget. That is something that can be considered, or if need be, we can do a budget amendment at that time when we get to that point. But right now, we do not need a budget amendment because we do have the money in the budget.
Okay, so going forward, you'll be mindful of that and make some recommendations to us or give us things to consider?
Yes.
In recognition of the fact that we're going to be
Yes.
over $80,000 overspent on
Right.
it.
When I spoke with the DPW director, he said of the things that he has in his budget, between slag and crack fill and salt, he believes the salt is much more of an emergent decision.
Thank you.
Has there been any discussion with the DPW director about just using sand or a mix with sand?
Now, I talked to him briefly, but then, and I didn't get a definitive answer. I did talk to the county about that. The county, because they are running out of salt, they're doing a 2-to-1 right now, or going forward, so they have enough through April, or if we have something in May. But if, so we do have that ability. If you don't want to go with the whole 600, there's always that option as well. But if we get, we won't, once we pass this up, I don't know if we're going to find it again. So we have February and we have March for sure. If something happens in April that we have a snow or icy weather, we have to make sure we have salt at that point. But we could start using a salt sand mix like the county's going to start, and even with whatever we put in, the county said that they would work with us on adapting that salt.
Excellent suggestion, Supervisor Radke. Would we then want to be purchasing perhaps 300 tons and get some sand and mix it in?
I would think a mixture of some sort. I don't know what the ratio would be, but you know,
Is it 2-to-1, Madam Administrator, 2-to-1 sand to salt, or 2-to-1 salt to sand?
2-to-1 salt to sand is what they're moving toward right now. I know when we went through the budget process, or the cost of salt, that contract, their cost for a salt sand mix was $48 for a salt sand mix, 50-50. Now we're looking at 2-to-1 using our salt, so it wouldn't be a that much. A ton of sand is about under $14 a ton, and then whatever it costs for them to mix it.
So who mixes it?
We could mix it, or they could mix it. When I spoke with Jerry about us mixing it, he was concerned because of the lack of salt shed and it sitting outside, that
I don't see
it
us
would be
mixing
so
sand is $14 a ton?
Yeah, it was 13.7. Yes, 13.70.
Do we have any idea what they would charge us to mix it?
I don't. I'm sorry. He didn't get into that
no, I understand.
at this point.
We're bringing this up at the last minute.
Yeah, and I didn't want to get too far into the numbers. I was just wanted to make sure we could, we could get that allocation of some salt, so we're not worrying in the beginning of March that we have no salt. So.
Question, I know we sweep some streets. Will that increase the number of streets we'll need to sweep because we're putting sand on them?
That's correct.
We will need.
Yes, we will.
But that has been in the neighborhood of $4,000 or $5,000, so we're probably far better off putting some sand down
and sweeping
than we are.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make an amendment, and we can vote on it separately if you'd like, however you want to handle it, to purchase 400 tons and go with the county standard of a 2-to-1 mix with sand, 2 salt, 1 sand, and have the county mix it for us.
And I will amend my second. So 400 times 135 is $54,000.
Yeah.
Well, before we get there, though, has the county come back and said that the island will release any more or getting more shipments in?
No, they do not believe. I called Compass. Compass said they're not going to get any more in. I called the state. The state said there's a barge up in Canada, but it would be very, very expensive to get that. I did reach, and we both talked to another place in Illinois, but the cost was the same, essentially. I think Workman did a great job in stopping what they were doing and really working with us to reach out to Dubuque and to a couple places in Illinois for us to find as much salt as he could possibly do for us.
Thank you. Anything further?
Can I just make one suggestion? I know the motion right now says a 2-to-1 mix. I'd like that. Could you possibly amend it to just say that we're going to do a salt mix? Because what might happen is we'll do a 2-to-1 mix, and then suddenly both the county and us are going to need to go to a 50-50 mix, and I don't want to have them have to do a separate mix for us. We'd like to stay consistent with what the county is doing, so just because it's going to be cost effective for both communities.
So the salt sand mix is determined by the county.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Well, and I think it needs to be up to the DPW director. There may be some areas that need pure salt.
Okay.
And maybe some that could just be sand.
Fair enough.
Madison typically just uses sand, as do a lot of the northern counties. So the reason that the county in the past has not done the mix is because of the cost. It was more expensive to mix sand in with the salt as opposed to just buying pure salt, which seems contrary to what it should be, but that's been their opinion.
All right, we've got a first and a second. Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call vote, please, as we're talking about money?
So just so we can be clear, we're purchasing 400 ton. We're going to do a salt sand mix as determined by the county and the DPW director.
Okay. And I don't believe we need to do because we're staying within budget, we're not doing a budget amendment, but if you'd like a roll call, I'd be happy to do that.
Yes, please.
Chairman Merrick?
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf?
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher?
Aye.
Supervisor Durr?
Aye.
Supervisor Radke?
Aye.
Motion carries. Lastly, number 25, accounts payable in the amount of $3,048.12 to Ruckert and Melke. Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Oh, do we need a second?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Getting late. And a second. I'll second it. I beat you. Madam Clerk, roll call vote now.
Chairman Merrick?
Aye.
Supervisor Durr?
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Abstain. Motion carries. On to $201,723.32. I will make a motion to authorize payment in that amount. Is there a second?
Second.
And Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Merrick.
Aye.
Supervisor Durr.
Aye.
Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Supervisor Radke.
Aye.
Supervisor Wolf.
Aye.
And motion carries. And lastly, is there a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.